Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Unmuted. I'm Judge E.J. Russell, and here at Unmuted, we want to take the muzzle off and talk candidly about issues and concerns in the public. Unmuted will feature a variety of guests, including politicians, community leaders, entertainers, and others who are decision makers in the community. If you are interested in contacting us, you can do that by going to myyahoo.com, unmuted@myyahoo.com, and send us an email. We'd be glad to hear from you with your recommendations on issues that are just burning in your soul and you want to hear some candid discussion on them. Today, our guest on Unmuted is Nsombi Lambright Haynes, and we're going to be talking about One Voice. She is the executive director there, and they are advocates for equality and very, very busy in the community. Welcome to Unmuted, Nsombi.
Thank you so much for having me, Judge Russell.
Well, I am pleased that you're here. So tell me about One Voice. What is One Voice and what exactly does it do?
One Voice has been around for almost 20 years, and it always makes me take a breath when I say that, because I remember when One Voice started, it was shortly after Hurricane Katrina. When the storm hit, I was still at the ACLU of Mississippi, and my dear friend Derek Johnson, who is now the CEO of the National NAACP, who was then the Mississippi State Conference NAACP president, was going around and serving constituents who had been impacted by the storm on the Mississippi Gulf Coast and in South Mississippi. And he was having conversations with people in South Mississippi about some of the policy gaps in those communities. And that's where some of the ideas around forming One Voice started. So I remember that time so vividly, and so it's hard to imagine that we're almost 20 years from the start of the organization. But the organization started, I joined the staff in 2011, and of course when Derek left to assume the role of national president of NAACP in 2016, I took his place and have tried to fill those very large shoes. But we have the mission of trying to lift the voices of traditionally marginalized communities in Mississippi, and making sure that everyone has a seat at those important policy tables that we need to have a seat at.
Well, talk to us for a minute about some of the accomplishments of One Voice over the last almost 20 years. I tell you, time really flies.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Some of the amazing work that we've done has been around leadership development. We are in our 14th year of an amazing leadership institute. One of the things that we wanted to do is to make sure that we had leaders throughout the state who understood the really critical needs of leaders in Mississippi. And not to take away from any of the fine leadership development institutes or other establishments that are around the state, but we wanted to make sure that particularly Black leaders had what they needed in Mississippi to be able to address those needs, whether they were running for office or just trying to address needs in their community. So along with Congressman Benny Thompson, we formed a leadership institute that's in its 14th year, and we have over 300 graduates from that Leadership Institute throughout the state, South Mississippi, North Mississippi, the Mississippi Delta, that have come out of that Leadership Institute at that point. We are also in our 13th year of a leadership summit, where we bring these leaders together along with elected officials to talk about some of those best practices that have happened throughout the state and that have happened in other states. Because one of the things that we want to do is make Mississippi better. And we know that we can't sit around complaining about everything that's wrong with Mississippi. We can do that all day long, but we have to talk about solutions. And so in order to do that, we have to come together with decision makers, and we have to talk with real people who are actually in communities and come up with ideas. And so some very powerful discussions happen at those summits, and very powerful ideas and solutions come out of those summits. And so we're very proud of some of that work, and some real important policy achievements have happened over the years. We were the catalyst for the Better Schools, Better Jobs ballot initiative that was back in 2009 that started the process of trying to fight for full funding for public schools. Unfortunately, that ballot initiative didn't make it. But we think it did start at some very important discussions about full funding for public schools, and we're hoping that we'll get close to that and even starting a new process for full funding for public schools one day.
Well, it sounds like shortly after the organization was formed, One Voice, it put together some very, very much needed programs to not only train those leaders, but to have them ready for when others are moving on and out of their jobs, to be able to move into positions to work in those communities. And that is so important, because we got to have succession plans, because the old politicians, the old community leaders are dying out. Yes. I was talking to a friend the other day and thinking about some of our great leaders that have all passed in the last 6 months or 7 months. And it is just amazing. You know, we lost Tina Turner. She wasn't necessarily a politician and that kind of thing, but she made some very powerful music and was a role model for people trying to escape domestic violence, and the way in which she did that. So we have lost some. Harry Belafonte, I can't talk about this kind of thing without mentioning his name, but we need people who are coming on behind them. Absolutely. And of course, people don't see all of the work you do in the voter registration. I say registration, but it's so much more than that. Educating the public. Help me out with that, because you talked about those two really big things, but there's so many smaller things that you're doing that impacts communities and our politics every day. I know that you guys have been involved in House Bill 1020. And doing some work. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know there may be some litigation out there, so you may be a little bit limited, but tell us what you can.
Oh boy, yes. I will start with the voting rights work, and I'll end on a negative note with House Bill 1020. So with the voting rights work, that's another one of our greatest achievements, and there's so much work to do in that area, as you know very well, Judge Russell, because you have often volunteered with our election protection program when you've been off duty. I must say that, wearing another hat in your volunteer service role. We have started a table since 2008, along with the Mississippi NAACP, of volunteers, organizations, statewide organizations and local organizations to do voter registration, voter engagement, and election protection. And that just means making sure that people are educated about the voter process and that people understand their rights. So we have a toll-free number that is answered by Mississippi volunteers. And so that if there is anything happening at polling places, people can call that number, and it's 888-601-VOTE. And it will be answered by volunteers who have been trained. And if they can't answer those questions, volunteers like Judge Russell will then answer the call, and they will then try to address the situation that's happening at the polling place, because oftentimes we see that people are turned away at polling places for very minute situations, and then they don't come back to vote, and we lose a lot of people that way. So that election protection program is so important and vital. And of course, you brought up House Bill 1020. That gave me a lot of stress over the legislative session this year. House Bill 1020 was one.
Hold that, because I want us to have continuity.
Okay.
You're tuned in to Unmuted. We'll be back.
Footprint Farms is a beautiful 68-acre vegetable and cattle farm located in Jackson, Mississippi, and is Mississippi's largest urban farm. The mission of Footprint is to provide healthy food choices, introduce our youth to agriculture, and provide training and technical assistance to small farmers and ranchers. The farm is open to the public every Friday from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. to purchase fresh produce or visit us at the Mississippi Farmers Market located near the fairgrounds. We accept all forms of payment, including EBT and SNAP benefits. Looking for a beautiful venue for your next wedding, family reunion, or dinner? Footprint Farms offers a 3,000 square foot facility on 5 beautiful acres, perfect for your next event. For more information, visit our website at footprintfarms.com, Facebook and Instagram at Footprint Farms, or call us at 601-910-5534. Footprint Farms, farm fresh, city sweet.
601-668-5583. The deadline for registration is June 2nd, 2023. So support Black businesses, shop local, and support small businesses. We need you at the Jackson Medical Mall Farmers Hand Market at 2548 Livingston Road. All right, we're back with our guest, Nsombi Lambright Haynes with One Voice. She is the executive director there, and I wanted to give you a chance to catch your breath on 1020 because I know you're about ready to unload. Now, tell us about all this stress.
Thank you for that moment. So with the House Bill 1020, of course, it was one of just a string of horrific bills during the legislative session that were targeted towards the city of Jackson, and this was one of the worst that establishes a separate court system that Jackson citizens are not able to select, and also expands the reach of the Capitol Police in Jackson. And this brand of the Capitol Police have no authority outside of the state Department of Public Safety. So if something happens inside of the city of Jackson, the only authority figure that individuals in Jackson have to question would be the police chief who works out of Brandon, Mississippi, and Sean Tyndall, who is the commissioner of the Public Safety Department. And so the bill has been very problematic, and it did pass and was signed by Governor Reeves. And at that point, several organizations filed suit. The Mississippi NAACP and the National NAACP filed suit. I am a plaintiff in the NAACP lawsuit, in my position as the Jackson NAACP president, so changing hats. And in that lawsuit, Judge Wingate on last week, I believe, did extend a temporary restraining order on the appointment of the judges. The next rule of order is, I believe, the naming of the other individuals in the lawsuit, and I think the remaining individuals are the governor and the Attorney General, Sean Tyndall, and I think the police chief as well. So I think our next hearing will deal with the naming of those individuals, and that will probably be within the next 2 weeks. So we look forward to that. There was another lawsuit filed by Mississippi Center for Justice in the ACLU of Mississippi that was in Chancery Court. And that suit ended up being dismissed by Judge Thomas, I believe 2 weeks ago. But he also filed a restraining order that held off the naming of those judges as well. So there's been some work to push back on this horrific bill, and we'll keep fighting for as long as we can.
Well, now, Nsombi, let's take off your plaintiff hat.
Okay.
Because you hear people talk about the expansion of the Capitol Police jurisdiction. And I get it. You want a police presence.
Yes.
Jackson Police Department needs help.
Yes.
But do we really need a whole new police department? And one that does not have any responsibility to the citizens outside of arrest and working to help with prosecution.
That's right.
Many of them don't live in the community. Plus, why not make them part of Jackson Police?
Absolutely.
It reminds me of a period of time during Reconstruction, toward the end of Reconstruction, when all of the federal troops were removed from the South, and folk who didn't want the federal troops in the South anyway to make them do right, then decided that they just wanted to do anything and everything to undo the Emancipation Proclamation, making of laws, the black codes. So people need to be careful. Sometimes we can want some things, but the way in which you get those things is not necessarily in your best interest. What do you have to say about that? Am I right? Am I wrong?
You are absolutely right, and that's what we've been talking about in our community meetings with Jackson citizens, because we know that citizens are fearful right now. We hear the stories about the shortages in police officers in the Jackson Police Department. We know that elderly people are scared to come out at night. I live in a Jackson neighborhood. I hear the gunshots at night. We know, and we hear their cries, and we're with them. But we also know that crime problems can't be solved by over-policing. And we also know that, like you said, policing problems need to be solved in-house by enforcing what we have within our city with the elected officials that Jackson citizens have gone to the polling places and voted for. So with those two things, we've attempted to make sure that Jackson citizens understand that this is not the right way to go in any form or fashion.
Well, and a second piece of my concerns about this is the appointment of judges and prosecutors who have also no responsibility to the people that you're supposed to be representing. Judges are in Mississippi by Constitution are generally elected. But this bill bypasses that because someone who does not necessarily have the best interests of the citizens in mind when they are making their decisions have now decided, well, we want to take over Jackson without saying those words, because if your goal is to help with crime and to make sure that those prosecutions happen speedily, why is there a civil component to that? Help me with that, because nobody has been able to explain to me why these judges are handling civil matters when your whole talking point about creating these additional judges is for crime. Help me, Nsombi.
I can't help you. I cannot help you because those questions have not been answered for us either. And all along, even for our lawmakers, our Jackson delegation, asked those questions during the legislative session, and their questions went unanswered, and they were left out of the planning process for the structure of this bill, and none of them were named on this bill, being the Jackson delegation. And so, you know, the whole structure of this bill was just so disrespectful. And you're absolutely right in connecting this bill and remembering the Reconstruction period and even going back to Jim Crow for us, because we are going directly back to those times where decisions and the authority of Black people is undermined and disrespected and not recognized. And that's exactly where this bill and where the respect of some of our lawmakers and decision makers at the state capitol is pointing to right now.
Well, and I think the entire community, whether you are a minority, Black, Asian, Hispanic, regardless of your political affiliation, you should be alarmed because they come for Jackson today, but will they be coming for you next legislative session? Right. I tell you, it is alarming the way that they are trying to undermine the Black leadership that you find throughout the state of Mississippi. You know, next could be our schools. I mean, it could be endless. And once again, going back to those Jim Crow laws where you had to tell me how many bubbles were in a bar of soap before I could even vote or register to vote, let alone vote. When people were being lynched because they chose to exercise their right to vote, people, it is at risk. And if you don't believe it, just sit back and say, oh, my vote doesn't matter and I can't do anything about what they're doing, because the power is in your hands, but you have to exercise it. Nsombi, we're going to continue talking about some of these moves that are being made on the city of Jackson. When we return, we're going to take a break and come back. We are talking with Nsombi Lambright with One Voice here on Unmuted.
Welcome to the JMMF's Culinary Kitchen in partnership with Footprint Farms, the Farmers' Hands Markets, and funded in part by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, sponsored by Humana. I am Chef Shishi, the owner of Just in Time, the featured chef of the JMMF Culinary Kitchen, where we prepare farm-to-fork-centered, healthier, all-natural foods in the urban community. Our menu includes salads made from collards, kale, and spring mix varieties, fresh vegetarian soups, and fresh juice Made daily. We're open Tuesday through Friday from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. And remember, what you put in your body is just as important as what you put on your body. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Welcome back, everybody. And let me remind you once again that Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Metro Jackson, Mississippi chapters will present Pretty Black Dollar Day on June 16th, 2023. That's Friday from 4 o'clock p.m. till 7 o'clock p.m. Pink pop-up shop. We want you to shop local, support small businesses, support black businesses. This will happen at the Farmer's Market, located at Jackson Medical Mall, 2548 Livingston Road, Jackson, Mississippi. If you want to be a vendor, please contact 601-668-5583. The vendor fee is only $30. You can't beat that. So register now and be prepared, though, to shop. Shop till you drop on Friday, June 16th, 2023. We're back with Nsombi Lambright of One Voice, and we are continuing to talk about the beginning. And Mississippi, in many instances, writes the playbook for other states to follow. They just want to see if it'll work in Mississippi because they think, you know, we are a little bit warped anyway from our leadership to our citizens and everything. But if it'll work for Mississippi, why won't it work for Iowa? Why won't it work for South Carolina? So I beg of you, please stay engaged and be woke. Don't be the person that's asleep. I know that one of our presidential candidates thinks that there should be a law telling you shouldn't be woke. I mean, you're supposed to be dumb and just let things go. But be woke, because that means that you are aware, that you are understanding what's going on around you. And people are trying to put some of us that look like me back on the plantation, or even worse, back on the slave ship home. I don't know anything about Africa, so I don't want to go. What you think about that, Nsombi?
I would like to go, but I want it to be my choice. I want it to be my choice.
Exactly.
I would love to go, but you are absolutely right. We need to stay woke, and we need to make sure that we are controlling our own destiny. And you're right about Mississippi being the playbook. And interestingly enough, as we've been talking about these bills, it's interesting how many states and cities have reached out to us about the playbook that is being followed that has happened in other cities. For instance, Detroit and Memphis. We've had a lot of people to reach out to us from Detroit and Memphis about what has happened there and the similarities in Detroit, especially, saying that, hey, Jackson is going to be the next Detroit. And we remember hearing that during the airport takeover several years ago. And they were like, okay, watch out, because it's the airport now, and then it'll be the schools, and then it'll be your utilities and something else. And so I remember that conversation back then, and now it's really happening. And so when 1020 came out, a lot of people reached out to us again and said, you're looking more and more like Detroit, so you really need to watch out. So that same playbook is continuing to be used in cities where the leadership looks like us.
Well, and patience. Patience is the watchword when it comes to that, because it took 50 years. to overturn Roe versus Wade. But over that 50-year period, if you look back, there were small incremental growths and legislative matters that were all designed to overturn Roe v. Wade. And even what is happening in Mississippi, the legislation that bans abortion from conception, and like who knows when conception is, so I guess you're walking around and somebody says, oops, she may be pregnant, so now you can't even go to the doctor to see if you're maybe pregnant. I mean, the restrictions are draconian. They are designed to, I guess, put women in a place where they used to be. That's under the thumbs of the male. If you look at your legislature, 80%, if not a higher number, are old and middle-aged white men who could care less about women or minorities. Understand that. You need to be woke. You need to be involved. You need to read, educate yourself. Don't take my word for it, because they're coming for you.
Absolutely.
You know, but look at the states that have now enacted, and some of it was in response to the Supreme Court decision in Roe v. Wade, but some of them were just waiting and chomping at the bit to be able to follow. And Mississippi, once again, was that playbook. So think about who you're voting for in November, people, because some of the folk who are in these offices have no interest in your needs. Am I right?
You are so right. And Judge Russell, when you talked about,
I want to be wrong.
I know, and I want you to be wrong too, but you're not. So far, you were just hitting the nail on the head, because for so long, people said, oh, poor Mississippi, you guys only have one abortion clinic, and you guys are not going to have access to abortion. Poor Mississippi, poor Mississippi. And then we sent that Dobbs decision to the Supreme Court. And now everybody said we should have been working in Mississippi instead of saying, poor Mississippi. We're so glad we're not like Mississippi. Mississippi set the tone for the entire nation. And one of the most disturbing things, whenever I used to have those conversations with people that would say, well, abortion is not really my issue, and it's an abortion thing, and people just need to have safe sex and don't worry about abortion. I remember giving this speech somewhere and talking about being pro-choice and, you know, hearing the crickets in the room, of course, and I was used to that. And I'll never forget this woman coming up to me saying that she was forced to carry around a fetus for 6 months that had passed away because her OBGYN refused to remove the fetus after it had passed away, because her doctor had religious beliefs that felt like that would be like abortion. And so she had to go around with people thinking she was still pregnant when the baby was dead inside of her. And I'll never forget that story, and that was almost 10 years ago. And when I tell people that we're pushing women to make life-threatening decisions about their body like this, you know, it really just changes the tone. And it's not about people being careless or people making lifestyle choices. This is really about our lives and about people staying out of our business.
Well, and it's also about health, because what other problems may have been caused by carrying a dead fetus inside of your body and not removing it in a surgical, medical, safe manner? What else might that have caused, and what kind of problems that female may have had after that? But I also think about people who are, quote, pro-choice. They don't have a problem pro-life, I'm sorry, who are pro-life, they don't have a problem with executions. They don't have a problem with bringing a child into the world with no health care, no place to really live, not enough food, poor education, lack of ability to thrive in life. So where's your pro-life when that child is born? Because I think in terms of some of these places that have put laws in place that will require you to carry a fetus that is the result of a rape or incest. Now, you probably don't have any warm feelings toward that fetus, and then you're going to be required to carry it around for about 9 months, and then you're going to be required to nurse it, feed it, and all of these kinds of things after that child is born. Right. After that child's life is really visible, but nobody's there to help you. And then we wonder why so many people may be disposing of their children in the garbage can and all of this. Do we know the backstory as to why that pregnancy came to fruition? And not all of them are rape and incest, but I cannot imagine. Every time I look at a child, I'm reminded of one of the most traumatic events in my life, you know?
Exactly.
So who really is the concern for? You're not taking care of the fetus. You're not taking care of the mental and emotional state of the woman.
Or the mom, that's right.
So help me, Nsombi.
Again.
I really need help.
I cannot help you. I am happy that through the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable work this year that they did expand Medicaid coverage for moms for postpartum care during this year's legislative session. That is one positive thing that happened during this year's legislative session.
But I just had a baby that came from a rape or incest. Does it matter to me?
No.
You know, it is not a fun time in Mississippi and across the country, because once again, Mississippi is just a playbook, and people from other states look at what's happening and they write their own playbook that is similar. We're going to take another break and we're going to come back unmuted.
Footprint Farms is a beautiful 68-acre vegetable and cattle farm located in Jackson, Mississippi, and is Mississippi's largest urban farm. The mission of Footprint is to provide access to healthy food choices, introduce our youth to agriculture, and provide training and technical assistance to small farmers and ranchers. The farm is open to the public every Friday from 2:30 to 5:30 p.m. to purchase fresh produce or visit us at the Mississippi Farmers Market located near the fairgrounds. We accept all forms of payment, including EBT and SNAP benefits. Looking for a beautiful venue for your next wedding, family reunion, or dinner? Footprint Farms offers a 3,000 square foot facility on 5 beautiful acres, perfect for your next event. For more information, visit our website at footprintfarms.com, Facebook and Instagram at Footprint Farms, or call us at 601-910-5534. Footprint Farms, farm fresh, sweet.
Welcome to the JMMF's Culinary Kitchen in partnership with Footprint Farms, the Farmers' Hands Markets, and funded in part by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, sponsored by Humana. I am Chef Shishi, the owner of Just in Time, the featured chef of the JMMF Culinary Kitchen, where we prepare farm-to-fork centered, healthier, all-natural foods in the urban community. Our menu includes salads made from collards, kale, and spring mix varieties, fresh vegetarian soups, and fresh juice elixirs made daily. We're open Tuesday through Friday from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. And remember, what you put in your body is just as important as what you put on your body. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Just a reminder again that on June 16th, 2023, Friday, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Metro Jackson, Mississippi chapters will present Pretty Black Dollar Day. It's a pink pop-up shop and we'll have all kinds of great things that you want to spend your money on to support black businesses, support small businesses, and shop local. This event will take place at the Farmers Market located at the Jackson Medical Mall, 2548 Livingston Road, Jackson, Mississippi. If you want to be a vendor at this pink pop-up shop, you can, the fee is $30 and you can register. You can call 601-668-5583, and the deadline to register is June 2nd, 2023. So you only have a couple of days. Well, you only have one day because today is June 1st. Register. 668-5583, area code 601, to be a part of that pop-up shop as a vendor. We are back with Unmuted, and I am your host, EJ Russell. We are talking with Nsombi Lambright of One Voice, and you say, well, y'all been talking about all of these things, but One Voice is involved in them, trying to educate the community, trying to get the community involved, and looking out for what is going on around you, being aware of what your community leaders, your politicians are doing to change your lives, your quality of life, just involved in the community and trying to help you stay a little bit awake. You know, you might still have a little sleep in your eyes and you may yawn every now and then, but hopefully their work will touch your life in some way. So once again, remind us of some of the things and give people contact information if they want to reach out, if they want to volunteer, if they need some demographic information, because you forgot to tell us that. Yes. Y'all keep all of that kind of stuff, all that voter info and all.
Absolutely, yes. We definitely need volunteers. We depend on the support from volunteers, especially during this election season. So if you want to get some experience, or if you have experience doing that sort of work, please sign up on our website. That's onevoicems.org. And that's also our social media handle on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Did I forget any of the?
Yeah, and that's ONE1, not the number one.
One Voice, MS. Make sure you put that MS in there, .org. So please follow us on those social media handles and let us know you want to sign up to volunteer. And also our partner organization, Mississippi NAACP, and our Jackson branch NAACP. We need volunteers as well. We all work together in this, all hands on deck with this important work that we have coming up. We definitely need volunteers and rely on volunteers to do this work.
Well, and when you say this work that we're doing and the work that's coming up, remind folk what, if they have certain skills, or if you don't have any skills. I know they'll take you, but do you need people with certain skills?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because sometimes we do take for granted that people know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about voter engagement and voter registration, we set up tables at different events. Judge Russell just read that flyer that was making me hungry with those commercials talking about the food. But we set up tables at different events and we do voter registration. And so we provide trainings to educate people who, haven't really spent a lot of time looking at the voter registration forms, so that we can know all of the important pieces of the voter registration forms to complete. And we get people to help us get the voter registration forms completed and turned in to the circuit clerk's office. We also have what we call voter engagement practices, and that comes in the form of phone banking, and we have list of voters in the Jackson area, Madison County, Rankin County, whatever county you live in, and we call voters and say, hey, don't forget to vote. you vote at this precinct on this day, please don't forget to vote. And that voter may have a question, well, who do I vote for? Well, on your ballot this year, and we of course have a very full ballot this year, we vote for everyone from the governor on down to the sheriff to the circuit clerk, chancery clerk, and everyone else this year. So we'll have all of that information provided for the volunteer for that, to educate that voter. And so we train volunteers on all that information. And for those who may want to get some exercise in, we also have people to do canvassing. And so we have neighborhood canvassing. So we may pick a neighborhood like a Presidential Hills or Woodhaven in Jackson or other places. And we'll have a group of canvassers to go out with T-shirts, sun visors, water, and
Yes.
go out to canvass those neighborhoods, not during the hot times of the day and not for long periods of time, because we know that we are in extreme heat temperatures. So maybe like an hour and a half, no longer than 2 hours, to knock on doors and say, hey, just want to give you this information about voting, to see if you had any questions, and leave the information there and, you know, keep on going. So those are just some of the things that we have voters to do over the summer, just to encourage voter participation.
Exactly. And Mississippi, talk to us a little bit about Mississippi voter participation, because I think it's pretty low.
Yeah, last year was very disappointing. We were at an all-time low in the nation. Most of our counties performed under 30%. That was very sad and very disturbing. And so across the country, we underperformed across the country. And usually we're at about 35 to 40%, which is still extremely low. And we're always compared to the years when Obama ran for office. Mm-hmm. And during those years, which were 2008 and 2012, our numbers were at around 70 and 80%. And so if we could ever get back to those numbers, we would really be doing well in Mississippi. And so we really need for people to show up to your polling places. This is not about voting for candidates. We know that our candidates can let us down, mm-hmm. and we're not about to advocate for candidates. We're advocating for these issues, and we're advocating for accountability with these issues. When we vote, we're voting for health care, education. We're not voting for personalities. We're voting for these issues. So when whoever wins that office, we can then go back and say, hey, you said that you were going to do A, B, and C, and I am going to hold you accountable to doing it. And so that is what we're voting for. And, you know, we know that's a lot of work. You vote on someone and now you got to go to the meeting too. Yes, that is the work that we have to do. We have to go to the city council meeting. We have to go to the board of supervisor meeting. That is the work that we have to do as citizens. That is our duty and responsibility.
Well, and it's part of being a part of a democracy. And the one thing, I can't remember who I first heard say this, but nothing changes unless something changes. And we must change our voting habits. Go to the polls. Make me a lie. Because when they tell you your vote doesn't count, why do you think they are enacting all of these laws to keep you from casting that vote? So please, please be reminded that there are candidates. Educate yourself about the candidates so you can make an informed decision about who to vote for. And just because candidate A is a good guy doesn't mean that that good guy will translate into a good leader and believes in some of the things that you have an interest in. And, you know, we have been going back and forth about whether I should vote. Some people just want to vote in the presidential election. Well, if your presidential candidate doesn't have people down ballot who can support and help them get things done, then you really haven't helped a whole lot, because you need those down ballot people, those Congress people, those U.S. senators. And a lot of times your governors and your legislative leaders become those people. It's almost like we were talking earlier about a succession plan and training leaders to be able to step up and step into position when someone retires, dies, or just, decides, well, I'm just through, I'm done. Election, Nsombi, can you remind folk when they need to be ready to go to the polls? And when you go to the polls, don't let them not let you vote. Vote and fight about it later.
That's right.
Affidavit. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So, of course, we don't have early voting in Mississippi, but that primary election date is August 8th. And so please vote on August 8th. If you are going to be out of town or working on August 8th, you do have that month, 30 days before then, to vote by absentee ballot. And you can mail that in or go to the courthouse and vote by absentee ballot. So please do that. And then, of course, the general election will be November 6th, I believe, this year.
It's going to be the first Tuesday.
First Tuesday.
In November. So if you just remember the first Tuesday, but please do your absentee prior to that time. And just so much that we can talk to, and we may need you to come back before November voting day, and hopefully you will honor us with your presence. But One Voice is very busy in the community. Volunteer if you can. What's that phone number, Nsombi?
601-960-9594.
960-9594, area code 601. You've been tuned into Unmuted.